from people I've talked to is that they just don't think that having a life free from any kind of suffering at all is possible, which you can't blame them. It's a bold promise, and you actually really can't verify that for yourself until you get there. My name is Nick, and I'm from New York City. Before I came into the practice of Buddhism, I was working in corporate finance, mostly for software companies. The catalyst, I think, for looking into Buddhism that I just would get seemingly like just angry at things I intellectually knew like really didn't have a big significance on my life. It was more like an anger of like, I'd snap at somebody or I'd go to bed just ruminating. I don't understand why I'm taking the bait. What is that tendency? It doesn't seem like something that I can just willingly just wake up tomorrow and say, okay, I'm never going to do this again. So, I did some therapy, had some mentors, and nobody really seemed to have an answer. I know it has gotten better, but I know that it is still there. When is it going to jump out again? I first read the Suttas, and it was like, hey, the whole goal of the practice is to get rid of greed, anger, and delusion. I've never heard anybody promise that in my life. I didn't necessarily understand, was I a greedy person or not, or was I delusional or not, but I definitely understood anger. It was very clear, like, hey, if you follow this, it will uproot this for good. That sounds like, one, something that has never been promised to me before. Two, if it's true, that's something I have to do. As I continued to get into it, I was just like, oh, there's a lot more that's being promised here. Ajahn Nyanamoli would say is like your mind being immovable with anything that comes up, but like to be immovable in when death is happening. I mean, it's such a bold promise that I was like, well, nobody can actually lie about this. If it's a lie, then like it's going to be verifiable that it's a lie because you just do what the practice says and it doesn't work. Well, then you can just say, well, it's a lie. Like it's either true or it's not true. I don't have to believe. My practice started off with reading the suttas extensively, doing a lot of the traditional meditation practice. I also really focused on like cleaning up a lot of my body and verbal behavior. So like I would never have considered myself a gossiper, but when I really took that seriously of like, oh, that actually means I can't gossip about this political figure or this celebrity, just cutting that out entirely. I stopped killing like insects, flies in the house or whatever. I stopped smashing it, or at least I took that seriously. And then, if I slipped up, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I started donating my time to a monastery that was close to me. I tried becoming less attached to money. So I did that for like a year. And as I was doing that, my thoughts of ordaining really continued to grow because I was seeing myself get less stressed out. I knew overall that it was getting better, no matter how slow it was. My practice today is very different. I'm very focused on when I can discern whatever action I'm doing. Is it rooted in greed, aversion, delusion, or is it not rooted in greed, aversion, or delusion? It's very much undoing a lot of views that I have about the practice, and it's very much multiple hours a day sitting in seclusion and just contemplating. Buddhism, or the training, is about training your mind on how to be immovable in anything that comes your way. The practice feels like if you really take it, all of it, which the Buddha is essentially saying, you have to give everything up in order to realize this thing. There's even a sutta where like the lay people are like, it feels like an abyss. But if you take on the gradual training, you start with the precepts, you go into sense restraint, there's some benefit there. It does require a level of like absolute seriousness. The ordination thing, it kind of came all at once, but I brushed it off as just excitement for something that I thought was really going to help me. And then as I continued to practice, the thought of like ordination continued to grow. Well, this is really helping me. And like, if I'm only doing it to this extent, like, what will happen if I do it to the full extent? As that has continued to go on, like pretty much lost interest in anything else that doesn't relate to that. So that makes it hard. Not just me, it's more like, other people. I'm living my life a certain way that doesn't really match with how other people live their life, and it can get confusing. I quit my job, and then I'm now focused on finding a monastery that's going to have a suitable environment so I can continue to develop my mind and continue the training in the most optimal setting that's available to me. If anybody were to look at the 8 precepts, take on 5 of them or even 2 of them, abstain from killing and abstain from harsh speech, divisive speech, gossip, those don't really require anybody to do anything. It actually just requires you to stop doing things. And I would just encourage people to, do that and see for yourself. See if you start feeling better or not. If anybody was ever interested and they started reading this, like, wow, it seems like a lot, you could start with the little, but, take it seriously. That's all I would really say about it.